What if there was a way that you could immediately win more points on your serve just by making better decisions? Well, there is. And if you master this strategy, it'll work consistently and effectively no matter who you're playing. I'm talking about the strategy and mindset of the third shot that absolutely every single pickleball player should have. So today, we're gonna go over what it is, how you can use it, and why it's so important for your game. As someone who's played professionally, I know that after a certain level, you have to master this strategy or else it'll be very hard to get better. Grab your paddle and let's go. The infamous third shot in pickleball. To drop or to drive? That's the question. You've probably heard countless different opinions about what you should be doing with your opponent's return. Someone may have told you that you should always drop. And the local banger probably said that driving works way better. But in most cases, the answer to this question is completely different for everyone. There's no one-size-fits-all strategy on the third shot. We're playing to win, not to follow what we think we're supposed to do. But in order to craft our own custom third shot strategy, we need to go through a few different factors. But before we get into these factors, I want to go over the general functions of the drop and the drive. If your opponents are following the correct pickleball strategy, then they'll be at the kitchen line by the time that you're hitting your third shot. The only way that you can prevent them from hitting a volley in this situation is by using the drop. Generally, after you hit the drop, your goal should be to move forward and meet your opponents at the kitchen, leveling the playing field. This is the standard pickleball play that's considered to be the most reliable strategy. But that doesn't mean that you should use it every time. Because the drop's so difficult to consistently pull off, even the best players in the world make mistakes using it. If you're a player in the 3.0 to 4.0 range, then you're inevitably going to miss this shot sometimes. What you need is a custom strategy to hit as many neutralizing third shots as possible. And it's not going to be the drop every time. Looking at the drive, this is the shot that you use to take your opponents off guard with power. This can either cause them to miss, or it can lure them into hitting a shorter ball that we can follow into the kitchen. Certain players aren't good at handling a fast ball at the kitchen, so the drive can be extremely effective if you use it at the right time. On the other hand, the better the player, the better they'll be at handling the drive. If you're consistently using this shot against players who are good at handling power, it's going to be tough to move forward. So you have to be selective as to when you drive. Another play that you can use on your third shot is called the drop drive. We'll get into that later in the video, so please be patient. The first factor of third shot strategy to consider is your position on the court. This will depend on the depth of your opponent's return. Generally, the deeper the return, the more difficult it will be for you to hit an effective third shot. On a shorter return, you'll have more options and it'll be easier to neutralize the point. As a rule of thumb, if you're going to use the drop, the farther back you are, the higher you should aim the ball over the net. This is because you need to give yourself more margin for error when you're pushed back. Off these higher drops, you might not be able to sprint straight to the kitchen. But if you hit it well, it'll give you the opportunity to move forward to where you can try to hit a better drop on your next shot. If you're the type of player that really struggles with the drop, then it could make sense to go for more drives off of deep returns. If you're pushed super far back, then the drive probably won't be super effective. But if you keep it low, then it could give you an easier shot for your next ball. Off of a weaker return, you have way more options. If you're the type of player that shies away from using the drop strategy, this is the time to add some variety to your game. You're also closer to your opponents, so your drives will be harder for them to react to. So when you get a shorter return, option 1 is to drop and go straight to the kitchen. Option 2 is to drive the ball and be aggressive. The drop's usually safer to use, especially if you're out of position or the ball's below your knees. If the ball's higher and you want to hit a controlled drive, go for it. But generally, the goal here is to neutralize the point, and the drop is the best way to do that. That being said, the drive is a good way to change things up. If this is blowing your mind this far, I'm not done yet, but I'm hoping you feel like this is information that you can apply immediately to your game. If it is, I'd love it if you would dink the like button and subscribe so that you can be notified about our next video where we're giving away over $300 of free products. All right, looking at your opponent's positioning, it's important to realize that not all players in the 3.0 to 4.0 range will follow the proper strategy. More specifically, the returning player might not always follow the return into the kitchen. In the event that the returning player stays back, the smartest third shot is to hit a deep drive at their feet. This is the perfect way to take advantage of their poor positioning. If you can successfully hit a deep drive in this situation, your goal should be to move forward and take the next ball from the kitchen line. Now let's say you hit a really deep serve, delaying your opponent's arrival to the kitchen. In this case, they're going to be in the transition zone when you hit your third shot. Now, which shot should you use in this situation? Neither. If you go for a drive here, they'll have a higher volley that they can dictate the point with. If you go for a drop, the ball will sit up for them and you won't be able to move forward. The most effective shot to use here is called the drop drive. This is a softer drive that we aim to land at our opponent's feet in the transition zone. If you use this play successfully, you'll have no choice but to pop the ball up. In most cases, the higher level the opponent, the more strictly they'll move in off of every return. Above the 4.0 level, the returning team will almost always be at the kitchen by the time you hit your third shot. This is where owning the skills of both the drop and the drive are crucial. You just need to make smart decisions based off court positioning and your opponent's strengths and weaknesses. Okay, now that we've gone over what third shots make sense depending on court positioning, we need to go over how to test what will work best against your opponent's unique skill set. In the first 5 to 10 points of a match, it's vital that you track your opponent's levels and what they're good at. Imagine you're playing a team with one 4.0 player and one 3.0 player, but you just weren't paying attention and you hit the same types of shots to both of them. Even though they're a team, you can't play them as a team. Remember, they're two different players with different sets of skills. Your goal is to figure out which player is weaker. Remember which player makes more mistakes and hit your third shot to them more often. Even if the players seem to be an even level, there may be one that's better at defending drops, and there may be one that's better at defending drives. This is where you need to become a detective and pay attention to how they react to both shots. They could be players that hate drives, or maybe they don't handle drops well. You just have to create your strategy accordingly. By the middle of your first game, you should be locked onto a third shot strategy that can consistently win you points. If you can catch on to this winning strategy, stick with it until it stops working. If your opponents are catching on a little, you may need to mix it up to throw them off their rhythm. You may even need to re-enter a testing phase to lock onto a new strategy. The last step to constructing your own custom third shot strategy is to look deep within yourself at what you're good at. If you love to drop and dink, lean towards that in most circumstances. If you love to drive the ball, don't do it all the time, but use it to your advantage in the right situations. The key is to use your strengths with purpose, considering all the factors that we've talked about so far. Remember, there's no one-size-fits-all strategy, so it's important that you mold all this information to where it works best for your playing style. In the long run, you want to make sure that you're developing your game in a way that helps you get to a higher level over time. If you watch pro players, they're going to be dropping their third shot about 75% of the time on average. So you need to keep improving your drop, or else you'll get stuck in the 3.0 to 4.0 range. If you're someone that drives more than drops, you need to force yourself to use drops so that you can develop this shot over time. That being said, if you're competitive and you want to beat that one annoying player at open play, use whatever strategy you feel will give you the best chance of winning. But I guarantee that if you continue to develop your drops, you'll see a high level of success over time. Getting the third shot strategy down is one of the most important aspects to becoming a better player. So it's a must to have the full comprehensive understanding of the general strategy. And if you're struggling with the technique of the third shot drop, watch this video here.